Let's be honest. We've all been there. You cram for a test, you memorize a bunch of facts, and then a week later, poof, it's all gone. Well, today, we're going to talk about a way to stop that cycle. A method for truly understanding pretty much anything. This is the Feynman technique.
But before we get into the solution, let's talk about the problem. It's what I call the illusion of learning. You know that feeling, right? You spend hours with your books, highlighter in hand, and you feel super productive. But are you actually learning?
I mean, seriously, think about it. All those late nights, all that coffee, and for what? For the information to just vanish from your brain? It's maddening, and it's a universal feeling for a reason. It points to a huge flaw in how most of us approach studying.
And here's the simple, kind of painful truth. We've been doing it wrong. We fall into this trap where we think rereading chapters or highlighting paragraphs is real work, but it's not. It's passive. It tricks your brain into recognizing information, which feels a lot like knowing it, but it's not the same thing, not even close.
Okay, so the good news, there is a much better way. And it comes from a guy who wasn't just a world-class genius, but also happened to be a master at making crazy complicated things seem, well, simple.
So let me introduce you to Richard Feynman. I mean, this guy was the real deal. A Nobel Prize winner, a key player in quantum physics, you name it. But his real superpower, the thing that made him a legend, was his obsession with breaking any idea down to its absolute, most fundamental parts.
And that talent is what made him such an incredible teacher. You don't have to take my word for it. Bill Gates famously called him the greatest teacher I never had. That's the kind of clarity we're talking about, and that's what this technique is all about.
So, how did he do it? How can we tap into that? Well, it all boils down to a beautifully simple 4-step process. Think of this as your new blueprint for building knowledge that actually sticks.
All right, here we go. Step 1, pick a concept, any concept, and just write down everything you know about it on a piece of paper. Step 2, and this is the magic part, pretend you're teaching it to a kid. You have to use simple language, no jargon. Step 3 is where the learning happens. You identify where you got stuck, where you had to use a complicated word. Those are your knowledge gaps. And finally, step 4, go back to your books, fill in those gaps, and then try the explanation again, even simpler this time.
Now, this is so important. This isn't a checklist. You don't just do it once and you're done. It's a loop. It's a cycle. You explain, find a hole in your understanding, you go back and fill it, and then you explain again. Each time you go through that loop, your understanding gets sharper and deeper.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds almost too simple, right? But the reason it's so powerful is because of what it forces your brain to do. There's some serious cognitive science going on under the hood here.
See, this whole technique is designed to take you from just memorizing something to truly understanding it. It's the difference between knowing the name of a thing and knowing what that thing is, how it works. If you can't explain it simply, you're stuck on the surface. You haven't gotten to the real essence of it yet.
Yeah, and as this Reddit user points out, it all comes down to something called active recall. Instead of just passively looking at the information again, you're forcing your brain to pull it out, to work with it, to shape it into a simple story. That effort, that struggle, is what builds strong, permanent connections in your brain. Now, we've got this amazing tool, but like any powerful tool, you can definitely use it wrong. So let's go over some of the most common mistakes people make so you can avoid them.
And I'm serious about this. I'll be honest, when I first tried this technique, I completely messed it up. My grades actually dipped at first because I was making some of these classic errors. So let's make sure that doesn't happen to you.
Okay, mistake number 1. Don't use this to learn something brand new. You need some basic knowledge first. This is for deepening understanding, not initial exposure. Second, you have to pair it with spaced repetition. Your final, simple explanation, turn that into a flashcard. And finally, know when to use it. It's perfect for big core concepts, not so much for, just memorizing a list of names or shapes.
This quote from a student really hits on the biggest hurdle of all, jargon. Our brains love to hide behind complicated words because it feels like we know what we're talking about. But if you use a word that a 12-year-old wouldn't get, ding, 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 that's a red flag. That is a gap in your own understanding that you need to fix.
And look, let's just be real for a second. Facing those red flags can feel, well, kind of bad. It forces you to confront what you don't know. But that feeling of self-doubt, that's not a sign you're failing. That's a sign that the technique is working. It means you are right on the edge of a breakthrough.
So, we've talked about the how, the why, the what not to do. But the big question is,
Does this thing actually work in the real world? Well, the proof is pretty exciting. Take a look at this number, 17%. Just let that sink in for a moment. What on earth could that represent?
That was the average jump in test scores for English language learners in a published study. They went from an average of 65% on their tests all the way up to 82%, just by adding this technique to their routine. That's not just a small bump. That's like going from a D to a B. It's a huge, measurable difference.
And it's not just about the final grade. Students who use this consistently report that they get a much deeper understanding of the material, that it makes learning feel more active, and, maybe most importantly, it gives them a huge boost in confidence. Because once you can really truly explain something simply, you own that knowledge.
And it all comes back to this one powerful idea from Feynman himself. The whole point of this exercise is intellectual honesty. It's a system designed specifically to stop you from fooling yourself. Because, as he said, you are the easiest person to fool.
So I'll leave you with a challenge. What is that one thing, that one concept at work or in your classes, or just something you're curious about that's always felt a little fuzzy? Now you've got the blueprint. Go give it a try. See what you discover.